It starts with a line that sounds like a door slamming on human illusion. Vanity of vanities, the preacher says. All is vanity. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 doesn't open with tales of victory, a miracle, a battle, or a throne being established. It starts with a voice, looking at the world with brutal honesty. The speaker introduces himself as the preacher king in Jerusalem. Right from the start, the tone is heavy. We aren't on a battlefield in a prophet's court or before a crowd waiting for a story. We are inside the mind of a man who has studied life, labor, death, and human ambition, only to reach a soul-shaking conclusion. He asks a question that haunts the entire book. What does a person gain from all their toil under the sun? This isn't a casual question. It's not from someone lazy who never worked, or a bitter person who never saw success. It comes from someone who has observed life from the heights of wisdom and power. People build, plan, and work hard. They rise early, chasing profit and fame. But the preacher looks past the motion and asks what actually remains. What stays when it is all weighed against time? The camera pulls back. One generation fades and another one arrives. The earth stays, but human lives drift by like shadows. A father labors, a son inherits, and names are eventually forgotten. What felt urgent turns distant. What seemed permanent becomes dust. The preacher isn't denying that life has value. He's showing how fragile it feels when measured only by things under the sun. The sun rises and sets, then rushes back to start again. The wind blows north and south, circling constantly. Streams run to the sea, yet the sea is never full. Waters return to where they began. The world is in constant motion, yet that motion never brings final satisfaction. Creation itself moves, yet it seems trapped in a loop. Morning, evening, seasons, and rivers, all in a circle. And beneath it all, people ask if their striving has produced anything lasting. This is why Ecclesiastes is so powerful. He makes the audience feel the rhythm of life from the ground. It is just constant, repeated labor, repeated days, desires, and disappointments. All things are full of weariness beyond what words can even describe. The eye is never satisfied with seeing, and the ear never filled with hearing. People keep searching, yet the hunger remains. The world offers noise, beauty, and experience, yet the human heart reaches for more. The hard word here is vanity. In this book, it doesn't mean everything is worthless. The Hebrew concept points to something like mist or a passing breath, something you can see for a moment but never hold. He isn't saying life lacks value. He says life under the sun is temporary. It is elusive and empty if you ignore God's eternal perspective. As the opening continues, the preacher makes a bold claim. What has been is what will be, and what has been done will be done again. Nothing new under the sun. It might sound like he denies all progress, but his point is deeper. Human nature, pride, and labor keep repeating. Empires fall, but the human heart keeps chasing the same old promises in new packages. People think they found a new age, yet underneath the old, questions remain. Who are we? Why work? What do we gain? What stays when we are gone? Even memory fails. The preacher says there is no remembrance of the past, and the future will be forgotten too. This is one of the most sobering scenes in the book. Imagine great names being celebrated, then slowly fading from memory. Imagine entire lives of struggle and achievement becoming a mere trace. Then a rumor. Then total silence. The preacher forces us to look at life without the decoration. This isn't hopelessness. It is pure, raw honesty. Ecclesiastes tears away the illusion that life explains itself if we just gain more, see more, or leave behind a bigger name. The phrase, "under the sun," acts as the lens for the whole book. It describes life viewed from the earthly side, life seen from below, measured by experience, before seeing the full counsel of God. From that angle, it looks fragile. Everything seems repetitive and impossible to hold. The first movement of the book doesn't offer easy comfort. It asks the tough question. If generations pass, labor exhausts, and memory fades, then where can we actually find lasting meaning? The preacher brings us into the emptiness of life under the sun, so that every future answer must go deeper. The question is open now and cannot be avoided. If life under the sun is so fleeting, perhaps wisdom can explain it. Maybe knowledge can uncover the hidden pattern. Maybe the mind can reach what human effort never could. In chapter 1, the preacher turns from watching the world to examining it with intense, deliberate focus. He identifies himself as king over Israel in Jerusalem. This matters because he has access to every resource and power. He stands where judgment, wealth, and royal authority all meet. From that high position, he sets his heart to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. The scene gets personal. He is no longer just watching the sun or the wind. He is starting the great investigation of his life. He looks at their burdens and the endless motion of society. He studies it deeply. He weighs, searches, and examines. He asks if wisdom can make sense of this world. But that study brings him real pain. He says God gave humanity a heavy, exhausting task. Life is not just busy, it is draining. People are constantly occupied, always trying to solve the unsolvable, working in a world where things remain crooked, broken, and unfinished. The preacher surveys everything under the sun and concludes the same thing. It is vanity, a chasing after wind. A powerful image. A man can chase the wind with all his might. He can run after it, feel it on his skin, hear it rush through the streets, and watch it stir the dust. But he cannot hold it. He cannot store it. He cannot make it stay. That is what human understanding feels like when trying to master life alone. It can observe and name much. It can compare, classify, and remember. But when it reaches for total control, it grips empty air. Then the preacher shares a vital line. What is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is missing cannot be counted. He is not saying that life cannot improve, or that wisdom is useless. He is describing the profound fracture in our world. Some things are bent in ways intelligence alone cannot fix. Some losses cannot be added back to the balance sheet. Some wounds, failures, and mysteries cannot be repaired by logic. This is one of the harsh truths of Ecclesiastes. The book values wisdom, but it refuses to treat wisdom as a savior. Biblical wisdom helps a person live carefully and avoid folly. But here, it also reveals the limits of human power. The wiser the preacher gets, the more he sees that knowledge can expose the brokenness of life, but it cannot erase death, injustice, or the fallen nature of the world. He continues by speaking to his own heart. He says he gained more wisdom than anyone before him in Jerusalem. His heart experienced great depth. This is no guesser. This is a man who knows. He lived inside the pursuit. He stood with the wise. He measured every idea, judgment, and human experience. He knows what wisdom can and cannot do. So he sets his heart to know both wisdom and madness. He studies the ordered side of life and the chaotic side. He observes wisdom and foolishness, discipline and disorder, clear thinking and recklessness. After exploring both, he reaches a sober conclusion. It is all a striving after wind. Even comparing wisdom to folly fails to give his soul the final answer. Then comes the section's closing line. It lands with heavy weight. In much wisdom is much vexation, and increasing knowledge increases sorrow. That does not mean ignorance is better. The Bible does not praise foolishness. But Ecclesiastes is brutally honest about the burden of seeing clearly. The more a person understands the world, the more they notice its contradictions. It gets harder to pretend things are simple. Wisdom opens your eyes, but those eyes also see grief, injustice, and the limits of every human solution. That is why Ecclesiastes feels different from shallow optimism. It does not just say, think positive and you will be fine. It does not say, learn more and you will control the future. It leads the viewer into the mind of a king and thinker, a seeker who shows that even peak human wisdom hits a wall. The preacher can diagnose life's sickness, but he cannot cure it with knowledge. That is the essential movement of the book. Before testing pleasure, wealth, or success, it first tests the mind. It asks if wisdom can carry the weight of meaning. The answer is sobering. Wisdom is better than foolishness, but wisdom without an eternal perspective leaves the soul facing mysteries it cannot master. Having seen wisdom fail to heal the burden of life, the preacher tries another road. If the mind cannot find final meaning, maybe the heart can find it in pleasure. Perhaps beauty and accomplishment can quiet the emptiness. In chapter 2, the experiment begins. The preacher tells his heart, "Come now, I will test you with pleasure. Go ahead and enjoy. This is not a careless indulgence. It is a deliberate search." He tests pleasure as a potential answer. If life is short, if labor fades, and if wisdom only adds sorrow, then maybe happiness is the refuge. Maybe laughter can cover the weight of existence. Maybe enjoyment can lighten the load. But the verdict arrives quickly. This too was vanity. Laughter is madness, he says, and of pleasure he asks, what is the point? The text is not saying joy is sinful. Ecclesiastes is precise. The preacher is testing whether pleasure can hold the meaning of life. When laughter is forced to answer questions about death, time, and eternity, it collapses. It can brighten a moment, but it cannot redeem a life. The experiment widens. He explores wine while still using his wisdom. He is not just losing control, but examining the path of celebration and physical delight, trying to see what is actually good for people to do during their few days under heaven. He is watching himself. He is studying desire. He is testing whether a body surrounded by pleasure can finally quiet the soul's ache. From there, the camera pans to construction wealth and royal achievement. The preacher does great things. He builds houses. He plants vineyards. He creates gardens and parks filled with every kind of fruit tree. He creates pools to irrigate vast forests. The scene is cinematic grand royal estates and cultivated landscapes, stonework, flowing water, orchards and servants moving through polished spaces. Beauty by command, nature shaped by pure power. This isn't poverty critiquing wealth from afar. This isn't someone judging what they never had. The preacher stands inside total abundance. He buys male and female servants. Others are born in his house. He owns more herds and flocks than anyone before him in Jerusalem. He hoards silver and gold, the treasures of kings. He surrounds himself with singers and endless music. He indulged every desire. If his eyes wanted it, he took it. Whatever brought pleasure, he never held back. This is a crucial part of the book. The preacher isn't painting wealth as an imaginary temptation. He is showing what happens when a man has the power to pursue it all. Ecclesiastes doesn't condemn beauty or enjoyment. It exposes the failure of these things when we treat them as the final answer to life. The text tracks his success. He becomes great, surpassing everyone who ruled in Jerusalem before him, and his wisdom stays with him. That detail is everything. He isn't describing a descent into foolishness or losing his mind. He is conducting an experiment with full awareness. He is both the king and the examiner. He chases pleasure, but he keeps watching the results. For a moment, there is a reward. His heart finds joy in his toil. It is his share of the labor. Ecclesiastes is honest enough to admit success can bring real satisfaction for a season. The gardens are real. The houses, the music, the wealth, and the delight. It is all very real. He isn't pretending earthly pleasures have no taste or beauty. He is saying that even when they are real, they are not ultimate. Then comes the turn. He considers all his hands had done and the toil it cost. The camera stops moving through the palaces and gardens and turns back to the man standing in the middle of it all. He surveys the vineyards, the pools, the livestock, the gold, the music, and the achievements. He sees a life overflowing with everything people think will finally satisfy them. After looking at it all, he says, "Behold, it was all vanity and a chasing after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun." The shock is that his experiment didn't fail due to lack of opportunity. It failed because success and wealth were never designed to answer eternal questions. They decorate life, but they cannot conquer death. They fill rooms, but they cannot fill the human heart. They bring comfort, status, and power, but they cannot give him anything permanent when time begins to strip everything away. This is why the Book of Ecclesiastes speaks to every generation. The world keeps renaming its treasures, but the pursuit remains the same. People chase laughter to escape sorrow, possessions to escape insecurity, and status to avoid being forgotten. But the preacher already walked that road to the end. He didn't just imagine it. He built, bought, tasted, planted, and possessed it all. And when the noise faded, when the gardens grew quiet, he discovered that abundance without eternity still leaves the soul reaching for wind. The experiment promised fullness, but revealed the same emptiness under the sun. After standing in the middle of royal achievement, the preacher doesn't leave the experiment behind. He looks at it from another angle. If pleasure cannot satisfy the soul, perhaps wisdom still has an advantage. If success fades, perhaps a wise life can at least stand above foolishness. In chapter 2, the preacher begins to weigh wisdom against madness. He isn't starting over. He is comparing what he has already seen. He observes the wise person and the fool, disciplined judgment versus reckless living. A life guided by understanding versus one driven by blindness. At first, his conclusion is clear. Wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. It is a simple, powerful image. The wise person walks with eyes open. They see where they are going, recognize danger, and measure their decisions. The fool walks in darkness. They stumble through life without discernment, unable to see the path. Ecclesiastes isn't saying wisdom is worthless. The preacher knows wisdom is better. A wise life avoids unnecessary ruin. A wise person sees what foolishness refuses to acknowledge. But then the thought deepens. The same event happens to them all. The wise man dies, and the fool dies. The one who saw clearly, and the one who wandered blindly, both reach the same end under the sun. This is the wound that wisdom cannot close. Wisdom guides the road, but it cannot stop the road from ending. It helps a man live better, but it cannot make him permanent. The preacher speaks to his own heart again. If the fool's fate is also my fate, why have I been so very wise? This isn't an attack on wisdom itself. It is the cry of a man facing death's power to level all human distinctions. The wise may be honored for a time. The fool may be mocked for a while. But after the years pass, both are swallowed by silence. In the end, there is no lasting memory of the wise any more than the fool. Both are forgotten. Both die. The difficult truth here is that the text is not teaching that wisdom and folly are morally equal. The Bible consistently honors wisdom and warns against folly. But the preacher is looking at life under the sun and asking if wisdom alone can grant final victory over death. The Bible prizes wisdom, yet warns of folly. But the preacher looks at life under the sun and asks if wisdom can truly conquer death. The answer is no. Wisdom beats foolishness, but even wisdom cannot make a human life last forever. Now the tone shifts. The preacher says he loathed life because everything done under the sun felt grievous. It all felt like chasing the wind. This is raw. He had tested wisdom, pleasure, and greatness, and he feels mortality weighing down on it all. The issue isn't just that life includes pain. The problem is that even the best things cannot stay. He looks at his work, all the projects he built, all the wisdom, discipline, and effort he poured into his legacy. Then, a harsh reality strikes. He has to leave it to the next person. He cannot take his work past the grave. He cannot control what comes next. He cannot guarantee his heir will use wisdom rather than waste it. The scene goes silent. The builder stares at his life's work and realizes ownership is fleeting. The estate stays, but he leaves. His name might last for a while, but his voice is gone. The successor might be wise or a fool, yet that person gains power over all his hard-won skill. To the preacher, this is vanity. His heart sinks at the thought of his own toil. He works hard, only for someone else to claim the reward. This isn't just about money. It is about the fragility of control. People think that if they build enough and plan well enough, they can secure their legacy. But death breaks the plan. It cuts the worker off. The preacher asks what a person gains from all that striving. Days filled with sorrow, work that brings nothing but grief. Even at night his heart finds no rest. A striking image, the high achiever who cannot sleep. His body stops, but his mind stays trapped in his work. He regrets, protects fears, and carries tomorrow's burdens too early. But Ecclesiastes doesn't leave us in total despair. The preacher suddenly points to a different way to live. There is nothing better than to eat, drink, and find joy in your work. This isn't the old experiment with pleasure. He used to chase pleasure as the answer. Now he sees enjoyment as a gift. Pleasure as a god is vanity. Pleasure from God is a portion. He calls it a gift from God's hand. Without him, who can truly enjoy anything? The preacher is lifting our eyes above life under the sun. Good things cannot provide ultimate meaning, but they aren't meaningless when received from the Creator. Food, drink, and work become different when they aren't forced to be our eternity, but are accepted as gifts. It ends on a moral order. To the one who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering only to hand it over to the righteous. Again, he calls it vanity, because from our side, life remains a mystery. But a door has opened. The book hasn't answered everything, but it shows that turning good things into ultimate things fails. Wisdom is better than folly. Work is better than laziness. Joy is better than despair. But death makes greatness fragile and control temporary. Ecclesiastes teaches us to hold life loosely, not as something to master, worship, or own forever, but as a gift from God. Remember, nothing under the sun can replace God. After he shows that, success cannot escape the grave. The book lifts our vision into a wider view. Life isn't just our choices. It moves through seasons we cannot control. In chapter 3, the preacher writes the famous lines, "Everything has its season. There's a time for every matter under heaven. The words move like a heartbeat. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to tear down, a time to build. It captures all of human existence. A child is born. An old man breathes his last. A field is planted with hope, then later uprooted. Walls rise and fall. Wounds open and close. The preacher isn't describing an ideal life. He describes life as it unfolds under heaven, with beauty and pain, noise and silence, gain and loss. A time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance. Some days sorrow is unavoidable. Then joy returns like sun after a long shadow. There is a time to throw stones and a time to gather them, a time to hug and a time to step away. Life isn't one constant feeling. It shifts, it turns. It brings people near and asks for distance. Moments of building, moments of letting go. Then he speaks of searching and losing, keeping and casting away, tearing and sowing silence and speech, love and hate, war and peace. These aren't random. They are the human story. We spend our days trying to choose the right moment, protecting what we love, speaking when needed, or staying silent to avoid hurt. Hold on to what is worth keeping, and release what you can no longer carry. After listing life's seasons, the preacher returns to an echoing question. What do workers gain from all their toil? Seasons change, but they don't give humans control. You might plant, build, and plan, but you cannot force a season to arrive. You cannot stop death from arriving on time. You cannot force mourning to end early. You cannot keep every embrace from becoming a memory. The tough truth here is that Ecclesiastes isn't teaching fatalism. It shows that our choices exist within a larger order ruled by God. We act, love, and build, but we do not own time. These seasons reveal both our responsibility and our limits. Then the book shares a profound insight. God makes everything beautiful in its time. That doesn't mean every moment feels beautiful. Birth brings joy, but death brings grief. Healing is beautiful, but wounds sting. Peace is good, but war leaves scars. The preacher looks beyond the isolated moment. He shows us that time belongs to God, who sees the whole pattern, while we only see pieces. The text goes deeper. God placed eternity in our hearts, yet we cannot fully grasp His work from start to finish. Here Ecclesiastes touches the mystery of the soul. We live in time, but we long for more. We are surrounded by aging and change, yet something inside us reaches further. We want lasting meaning. We want beauty that stays. We want to understand the full story, not just our small part. But the preacher says we cannot uncover God's work from beginning to end. We sense eternity, but we cannot master the eternal plan. We feel the weight of something greater, but we cannot hold the design. This is why Ecclesiastes is so honest. It addresses our deep longing and our human limits at the same time. The preacher lands on a simple conclusion. There is nothing better than to be joyful and do good as long as we live. We should eat, drink, and find pleasure in our work. That is a gift from God. The book isn't praising empty fun. It teaches received joy. Life feels unbearable when you try to control every season or explain every mystery. But life becomes a gift when you realize even small blessings come from God. Whatever He does, it endures forever. Nothing can be added or taken away. God made it this way so we would stand in awe before Him. This is the turning point. Human works pass away. Plans shift. Memory fades. But the work of God stands firm. The right response isn't arrogance or despair. It is reverence. The fear of God isn't just a sudden ending. It is the foundation for everything the preacher shows. The chapter then returns to the brokenness of the world. The preacher sees wickedness where justice should be. Even in systems meant to protect what is right, corruption creeps in. But he decides in his heart that God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for every matter. The same God who rules the seasons also rules the final judgment. Human courts fail, but God's timing never does. Still, the preacher is sober. He says God tests us, so we see we are like beasts. One dies, and the other dies too. All share the same breath and head to the same place. From dust we come, to dust we return. This doesn't mean we have no value. It means death humbles every creature. It strips away our pride and reminds us we are dust. When Ecclesiastes compares humans to beasts, it speaks from the reality under the sun. Both bodies return to the earth. The passage isn't denying human dignity. It forces us to confront the fact that, from an earthly perspective, death comes to all and exposes the limits of our pride. The chapter ends by returning to the gift of the present. The preacher says there is nothing better than to rejoice in your work, for that is your lot. Who can show you what comes after? That question isn't meant to empty life of meaning. It removes the illusion of control. No one sees the whole future. No one manages what happens after death. We cannot command the seasons. So Ecclesiastes chapter 3 doesn't offer a simple answer. It offers a larger vision. Life has seasons. God rules time. We carry eternity in our hearts, but cannot see the full picture. Justice delays. Death humbles all, yet ordinary joy remains a gift. The preacher tells us to live with open hands before the God who makes everything beautiful in its time. After looking at time, judgment, and death, the preacher now turns his eyes toward society. The burden we feel isn't just internal. It is visible in our streets, our courts, our labor, and our loneliness. In chapter 4, the preacher says he looked again and saw the oppressions done under the sun. The scene grows heavy. He sees the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power sits with the oppressor, and again, no comforter. The repetition is intentional. No comforter. No comforter. The book forces us to stand near that suffering and feel the silence. This is where Ecclesiastes becomes painfully real. The preacher doesn't describe the world as it should be. He describes it as it often appears under the sun. People crushed by power. Think of those crushed by injustice. People weeping with no one strong enough to help them. He looks at this suffering and speaks with raw, bitter intensity about how dark life feels when evil rules and comfort vanishes. A heavy moment in Ecclesiastes. The preacher isn't giving a full lesson on death or hope. He is describing the crushing weight of oppression from a life lived under the sun. He shows how vile injustice is when power loses its righteousness, not to deny God's value of life. Then he shifts from oppression to another social rot, envy. He sees that so much human drive comes from a man's jealousy of his neighbor. People build, compete, and push themselves forward, but often not for peace or a calling. They work because someone else has more. Someone else is admired. Someone else has a name, a house, a title, or some success that sparks comparison. The preacher calls this vanity, a chase after the wind. Envy might make you productive, but it leaves the soul hollow. It can build empires, scale businesses, and sharpen skills to create a show of success. Yet underneath, the heart remains restless. The neighbor is just a rival. Work becomes a treadmill instead of a gift, and once one goal is hit, envy just finds someone else to chase. But Ecclesiastes doesn't suggest laziness is the answer. The preacher quickly notes that the fool folds his hands and wastes away. The image is vivid. The lazy man rejects wise labor and ruins his own life. So the text sets two dangers side by side. On one hand, restless ambition fueled by envy. On the other, the foolish idleness that destroys itself. Then comes the balanced wisdom. Better one handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil and chasing wind. It is a simple, unforgettable picture. 1 handful with peace beats 2 hands full of anxiety. A smaller portion with quiet is better than abundance that eats the soul. The book isn't condemning hard work or skill. It is exposing work poisoned by comparison pride and endless striving. Then the preacher spots another vanity, a man who is alone. He has no one with him, no son, no brother, yet his toil never ends. His eyes are never satisfied with riches. He never stops to ask, who am I working for, and why am I missing out on joy? It is a tragic scene. A man can be surrounded by stuff and still be alone. He can gather wealth with no one to share it. He can be busy every day and never realize his work is a prison. This leads to one of the most beautiful and practical passages in the entire book. 2 are better than 1, as they get a better return for their work. If one falls, the other lifts him up. If 2 lie together, they stay warm. If 1 is attacked, 2 can stand their ground. And a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. After showing oppression, envy, and lonely labor, the preacher highlights the power of companionship. We were not made to carry life alone. The threefold cord is not explained in detail, so we shouldn't force a specific meaning beyond what he says. The core truth is clear. Shared life is stronger than the isolated kind. Friendship, mutual aid, and support provide strength where loneliness leaves us exposed. The chapter ends by turning towards status and power. The preacher says a poor but wise youth is better than an old foolish king who won't take advice anymore. A young man may rise from poverty to the throne, while someone born in power may lose it all. Crowds may cheer the new ruler, but it never lasts. Later generations won't care. Political greatness shines briefly and then is replaced. This final scene rounds out the social portrait of chapter 4. The oppressed suffer alone. Workers compete through envy. The lonely labor without joy. Rulers fall. Loyalties shift. Status is unstable. Power is temporary. Popularity just fades away. Under the sun, society carries the same mark of vanity he saw in pleasure, wisdom, work, and time. And yet, this chapter offers wisdom for navigating the brokenness. It doesn't give shallow answers. It admits injustice is real, envy is draining, isolation is dangerous, and status is fragile. But it teaches that quietness is better than restless striving. Community is better than lonely hoarding, and wisdom is better than prideful power. Ecclesiastes isn't disconnected from real life. It walks through the world as it is teaching us to see clearly, without being fooled by what society praises. After exposing oppression, envy, loneliness, and the instability of power, the preacher leads the viewer to a different place. The focus moves from the streets and the throne into the house of God. In chapter 5, the preacher begins with a warning. Guard your steps when you visit the house of God. His words are serious. Worship isn't just a casual habit. Anyone approaching God must watch how they walk, how they listen, how they speak, and how they react. He already proved that pleasure, work, wealth, and power can all be vanity. Now he shows that religion can also be vain when we stand before God without reverence. The first command is to draw near and listen. He says that coming to listen is better than offering the sacrifice of fools. It is a striking image. A person can enter a sacred space, bring an offering, and go through the motions, yet still be a fool if the heart isn't humble. The problem isn't the act of sacrifice. In biblical times, sacrifice was core to worship. The problem is a person who performs religious acts while refusing to listen, obey, or grasp the holiness of God. The preacher warns that fools don't even realize they are doing evil. This makes his point even sharper. Empty religion is dangerous because it feels so real to the person doing it. You might think you honor God just by walking into His house, or by just saying words or performing a ritual. But Ecclesiastes pulls back the curtain. Worship without listening is just noise. Religious action without reverence is just foolish. The preacher shifts his focus to the words we choose. Don't be rash with your mouth, he warns. Don't rush to speak before God. The camera moves away from sacrificial hands to lips moving too fast. It's not a warning against prayer itself. It's a warning against careless speech before a holy God. We act like words are light and meaningless. We make emotional promises, pressured vows, and thoughtless prayers. We declare things without any plan to obey. But before God, words carry real weight. The reason is clear. God is in heaven, and you are on earth. So keep your words few. That sentence is the heart of this entire passage. God isn't just another voice in the crowd. He isn't an earthly king impressed by your religious display. You cannot control Him with speech, manipulate Him with vows, or move Him with empty noise. He is in heaven, and we are on earth. It is more than just distance. It is the gap between the Creator and the creature, between holiness and dust, between eternal rule and human weakness. This is the hard part of the passage. Ecclesiastes isn't banning prayer or worship or honest conversation with God. The Bible is full of lament, praise, and petition. The preacher warns against careless, proud performative, or thoughtless talk. He teaches that true worship starts with reverence listening and humility before the God who reigns in heaven. Then he uses a simple image. A dream comes with a busy mind, and a fool's voice comes with too many words. Just as a crowded mind leads to restless dreams, a foolish heart leads to excessive chatter. The problem isn't the word count, it is the condition of the heart behind them. Many words can just hide an empty heart. Religious language can mask disobedience. You can talk a lot about God while failing to actually fear Him. Next, he addresses vows. When you make a promise to God, pay it quickly. God finds no pleasure in fools. Just do what you said. In the ancient world, a vow was a serious promise made to God, usually tied to worship or distress. The preacher warns that making these vows lightly is reckless. Better not to vow at all than to promise and not pay. A careless promise to God is a major issue. The warning gets even more direct. Don't let your mouth lead you into sin. And don't tell the messenger it was all a mistake. It paints a picture of someone making a vow and trying to run from it. He speaks too fast, promises too easily, and then tries to take it all back like it never happened. But Ecclesiastes says words before God matter. Empty vows lead to guilt, and careless speech turns your worship into sin. The preacher asks why God should be angry at your words and destroy what you have built. This ties the warning back to the book's larger message. Human labor is fragile. Work is temporary. Success is uncertain. Wealth fades. Death is coming. Now Ecclesiastes warns that even your work can face divine displeasure if you treat God with religious laziness. It's not about being superstitious. It's about reverence. You cannot approach the God who gives life and joy as if He were weightless. Here is the conclusion of the section. When dreams and words multiply, there is vanity. But God, He is the one you must fear. The passage ends with the very theme that closes the book. Fear God. This isn't panic before a cruel deity. It is reverent awe before the holy Creator. It is the posture of one who knows God is in heaven and we are on earth, and that worship is not a performance used to manage God, but a humble response to Him. This is essential because Ecclesiastes doesn't just expose the vanity of pleasure, wealth, status, or labor. It exposes the vanity of religion without the fear of God. You cannot escape vanity just by using sacred words. You cannot hide a restless heart behind religious noise. You cannot make worship true by simply doing more, promising more, or performing more. The preacher brings us into the house of God and teaches that true worship starts with reverence, not noise. Humility, not haste. Obedient fear, not empty vows. After warning that worship loses its way without reverence, he turns back to the visible world. He looks at money, power, our appetites, our stuff, and the restless desire that keeps the human heart reaching for more. Still in chapter 5, the preacher starts with a sober observation. If you see the poor oppressed and justice being violated in your land, do not be surprised. He doesn't mean to make you indifferent. He is showing how deeply broken human systems can become. One official is watched by another, with higher ones over them. Layers of bureaucracy exist, and yet the poor still suffer. Courts, offices, and rulers all exist, but justice can still be delayed, twisted, or buried by ambition. Then he shifts to the land itself. The earth provides for everyone, and even a king depends on the field. This grounds us in a simple reality. No matter how powerful a ruler gets, or how complex a society becomes, life still depends on the earth, the harvest, and the provision God allows. Even kings need the fields. Power always depends on something outside itself. Now the preacher turns to money. He who loves money will never be satisfied, nor will he who loves wealth with his income. This, too, is vanity. That statement is sharp because it exposes the lie that desire has a finish line. We imagine satisfaction is just one more gain away, one more purchase, one more level of security, one more sign of success. But Ecclesiastes says loving money never ends in satisfaction. It ends in a deeper hunger. As your goods increase, so do the people who eat them. The rich have more, but more just brings more need, more management, more stress, more eyes watching, and more mouths to feed with what you've gathered. What is the owner's advantage? Only the chance to watch it all pile up. It's almost ironic. A man may collect great wealth, but often his only reward is staring at the mountain he made. Possession grows, but peace does not. The preacher compares this to the laborer's sleep. The worker sleeps soundly, regardless of how much he eats. But the rich man, his full stomach keeps him tossing all night. The picture is simple. One man has little, but finds rest. Another has plenty, but stays awake. Wealth brings comfort, yet multiplies anxiety. A heart that trusts in things doesn't get lighter. It just gets more terrified of losing what it collected. Here is the tension. Ecclesiastes isn't saying poverty is holy or wealth is evil. The book is warning against the greed for riches and the lie that possessions can satisfy your soul. Money is useful, but when you treat it as your ultimate security, you get restlessness instead of peace. Then the preacher describes a tragedy under the sun. Riches held by their owner to his own hurt. A man gathers wealth, guards it, and clings to it, but it only ruins him. Then a bad deal wipes it all out. He has a son, but there is nothing left to pass down. It is a tragedy. A lifetime of work vanishes in an instant. A man once rich now stands empty. What he trusted in disappears before his own children can see it. The preacher returns to our basic human reality. Just as a man arrives from his mother's womb, he will return naked as he came, taking nothing from his toil that he can carry away. This is the core message of Ecclesiastes. Wealth can be held for a while, but it cannot be carried through the gates of death. We enter the world empty-handed and leave it the same way. The belongings stay behind, but the owner moves on. So the preacher asks, what is the gain of toiling for the wind? He sees a man spending his days in darkness, misery, sickness, and anger. Wealth promised rest, but failed to deliver. It promised security, but could not shield the heart from grief. The problem isn't just that riches are lost. The deeper problem is that even if you keep them, they cannot provide eternal meaning. Ecclesiastes returns to a better way. It is good to eat, drink, and find enjoyment in all the work you do under the sun. During the few days God gives you, this is your lot. If God grants a person wealth, possessions, and the power to enjoy them, to accept his lot and find joy in his work, that is a gift. The difference is clear. Wealth without God is just restless hoarding. Wealth received from God becomes gratitude. True joy isn't found in having, but in the power to receive what you have with a thankful heart. The preacher says that such a person barely notices the passing of his days because God keeps him occupied with joy. This isn't escapism. It is a picture of contentment. A person who sees life as a gift isn't consumed by anxious counting, constant comparison, or the fear of tomorrow. Joy arrives when you stop demanding that created things play the role of God. Chapter 6 of Ecclesiastes continues this theme with a heavier, grimmer example. The preacher spots another evil under the sun, and it weighs on all mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so he lacks nothing he could ever desire. Yet God gives him no power to enjoy it. A stranger enjoys it instead. It is vanity, a grievous evil. This man has everything the world says he needs: wealth, status, success, and fulfilled desires. Yet he lacks the one thing that matters, the ability to enjoy it. The tragedy isn't that he has nothing. The tragedy is that he has plenty, but cannot receive it. Ecclesiastes shows that enjoyment is not automatic. It is a gift. A man can own everything and still possess an empty soul. The preacher imagines a man who has many children and lives for many years, but his soul is never satisfied with life's good things, and he isn't even granted a proper burial. The preacher says a stillborn child is better off than he. It is a shocking, harsh comparison, meant to highlight the misery of a life built on outward abundance, but drained of any real satisfaction. The passage uses brutal language to reveal the tragedy of a life filled with stuff, but no joy. The goal isn't to despise life or children, but to show that longevity, many descendants, wealth, and honor cannot manufacture meaning if the soul remains empty. Ecclesiastes is urging the audience to realize that the quantity of life is not the same as the fullness of life. The chapter continues. All a man's labor is for his mouth, yet his appetite is never truly satisfied. The wise and the poor alike face this hunger. Better to see what is right in front of you than to let your appetite wander. This too is vanity and a chasing after wind. The preacher describes the endless cycle of desire. The eyes can see what is actually here, but desire wanders after what we do not yet possess. The heart imagines peace somewhere else, in something more, something later, something beyond today's gift. The section closes by focusing on human limits. Whatever exists has already been named. We know what man is, and we know he cannot argue with one stronger than himself. The more words we use, the more vanity we create. What is the advantage? Who knows what is truly good for a man during his few fleeting days which pass like a shadow? Who can tell him what comes after he is gone? Here the preacher ties wealth, desire, and uncertainty together. People gather, hunger, argue, plan, and chase. Yet they remain mere creatures. They do not control the future. They do not know what is truly good for them. They pass like a shadow. The answer to your restlessness isn't found in more possessions, more status, more years, or more empty words. It comes from receiving your life from God, because only God can provide not just the gift, but the power to actually enjoy it. After exposing the restlessness of wealth and desire, the preacher begins to gather wisdom for life as it is. He offers no control. He knows the world is complex. He teaches how to walk when grief, injustice, foolishness, and uncertainty define life under the sun. In chapter 7 of Ecclesiastes, the preacher starts with a sharp insight. A good name beats precious perfume, and the day of death outweighs the day of birth. These words do not celebrate death. They are meant to force a sober look at reality. Birth starts a journey with an unknown end, but death shows how that life was actually lived. Character and legacy matter more than luxury or status. Then the preacher says, "It is better to visit a house of mourning than a feast, because that is the end of everyone, and the living should take note." The scene is quiet. A funeral teaches what a party hides. A place of mourning reminds us that time is short. Pride is fragile. Wisdom starts when you stop pretending death only happens to other people. Sorrow teaches the heart what shallow laughter never will. He continues by warning against anger, impatience, and nostalgia. Do not let your spirit turn quickly to anger, for anger lodges in the hearts of fools. Do not ask, "Why were the old days better than these?" That question shows no wisdom. Ecclesiastes knows people dodge the present by romanticizing the past. But true wisdom refuses to live in illusions. It learns to face today with faith. Then the preacher returns to the mystery of God. Think on God's work. Who can straighten what He has made bent? In prosperous times, be joyful. When trouble comes, consider that God made both, so that no one can know what the future holds. This is not passivity. It is humility. We must accept prosperity without arrogance and adversity, without claiming we know the full story. This is the delicate balance of Ecclesiastes. The book does not say pain is simple to grasp, nor does it tell us to ignore suffering. It teaches that both success and failure stand under God's rule. Though humans lack full access to the future, wisdom starts when we stop claiming more knowledge than God provides. In chapter 7, he faces moral complexity. He sees the righteous perish, while the wicked live long in their evil. This does not deny God's justice, but it shows that life does not always follow the neat patterns we expect. The preacher warns against self-righteous extremism and senseless wickedness. He isn't saying being righteous is wrong. He is warning against arrogant religion and reckless sin that destroys life. Wisdom, he says, gives more strength than 10 rulers in a city. Yet there is no righteous person on earth who always does good and never sins. This brings us back to humility. Wisdom is powerful, but no human is morally perfect. He even warns against eavesdropping on every word, knowing your own heart has spoken harsh words against others. Ecclesiastes strips away all pride, even religious or intellectual pride. The preacher tested this with wisdom, but truth felt far away. What has been is deep, very deep. Who can fathom it? The book again confesses the limits of human search. The wise man sees more than the fool, but even the wise cannot reach the bottom of all God has done. Life remains deeper than human explanation. Chapter 8 brings this wisdom into the world of power. The preacher asks, "Who is like the wise, who knows how to interpret things? A person's wisdom makes their face shine." Then he advises careful conduct before the king. Do not be quick to leave his presence. Avoid evil causes. The king's word has power, and no one can ask, "What are you doing?" In a world of authority, wisdom knows how to move carefully. Yet authority does not remove uncertainty. No human has power to stop their own spirit or command the day of death. There is no escaping that war. Wickedness will not save those who practice it. He sees people ruling over others to their own hurt. He sees the wicked buried with honor after coming and going from holy places. He sees justice delayed, and because the sentence against evil is not carried out quickly, people set their hearts on doing wrong. Yet he does not conclude evil wins. He says it will be well with those who fear God, but it will not be well with the wicked. This moral truth anchors the chapter. Ecclesiastes admits judgment may seem slow and life confusing, but it never erases the fear of God. The righteous may suffer, and the wicked may prosper for a while, but God remains the final reality. In chapter 9, the preacher returns to death. The righteous and the wise and their deeds are in God's hands, but the same fate awaits everyone, the righteous and the wicked, the clean and the unclean, the one who sacrifices and the one who does not. All face death. This is what makes life so humbling. Death comes for every house, every name, every class, and every reputation. Yet the preacher does not call us to despair. He says, "The living know they will die, but the dead know nothing and have no more reward." So he calls the living to receive their portion. Go eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a happy heart. God has already approved your work. Keep your garments white. Let oil always be on your head. Enjoy life with the one you love, for all your vain days given under the sun. Whatever you do, do it with all your might. This passage does not teach reckless indulgence. It teaches us to live with gratitude in the shadow of death. Since life is brief and the future is not in our hands, the wise person receives ordinary joys as gifts from God and works faithfully in the present. Still in chapter 9, the preacher notes that the fastest runner doesn't always win. The strongest fighter loses. The wisest go hungry, and the smartest rarely get the recognition they deserve. Life is unpredictable. Experts get overlooked, winners fail, and the gifted are often ignored. It is not chaos to God, but it sure feels uncertain to us. He shares a story, a tiny city under siege by a powerful king. A poor wise man saves the city, yet nobody remembers his name. Wisdom clearly beats raw strength, but the poor man was ignored. His wisdom was despised. It is a sad truth society often forgets the wise. Quiet wisdom is better than loud, foolish rulers, though it rarely gets the credit. Chapter 10 contrasts wisdom with folly. Dead flies ruin a jar of expensive perfume. Just a little bit of stupidity can wreck hard-earned honor. The preacher points to fools acting out incompetent leaders in charge, and princes forced to walk while servants ride horses. With pits, broken walls, and dull axes, these images show that foolishness is never harmless. It brings disorder to everything. A wise man's words earn favor, but a fool's lips lead to his own ruin. Fools just talk and talk, forgetting that nobody knows what the future holds after they are gone. Even private talk carries risks. Never curse a ruler, even in your thoughts, and keep your mouth shut about the wealthy in your own bedroom. You never know who is listening. In a world of shifting power, wisdom knows exactly when to speak and when to stay quiet. This part of Ecclesiastes doesn't solve every mystery. It teaches us how to live through the uncertainty. Grief can be a teacher. Anger destroys. Wisdom stays better than folly. Authority must be handled with care, and even if justice seems slow, we must respect God. Death comes for everyone, yet life is a gift. We cannot master the future, but we can live the present faithfully. He is building toward the finale. Live wisely. Do your work while you can. Remember your Creator and stand before Him with real reverence. After looking at vanity wisdom, labor death, and the mystery of life under the sun, the preacher heads toward his final appeal. He never tells us to give up. He calls us to live to rejoice, the right way to remember God, and to realize every life faces judgment. In chapter 11, he starts with a call to action. Cast your bread upon the waters. You will find it eventually. Give to many, because you never know what disaster might strike. The point is clear. We don't know the future, but that shouldn't paralyze us. Life is unpredictable, but wisdom acts. It works, it gives, it takes risks, and it does good without demanding total control. He uses creation to show us more. When clouds fill up, they pour rain. When a tree falls, it stays where it landed. If you watch the wind, you will never sow. If you stare at the clouds, you will never reap. It is simple. A farmer waiting for perfect weather will never plant a thing. You cannot demand absolute certainty before taking action. Ecclesiastes proved we cannot master life. Now it proves we must still live it. Then he points to God's hidden work. Just as you cannot understand how life forms in the womb, you cannot grasp the work of God who created it all. Life itself is a mystery. The hidden formation of a child mirrors all the things we cannot explain. God is always at work. So, sow your seed early and work late. You never know which effort will succeed. This balance is key. The book does not claim you control results by working harder. It teaches faithful action without the need for false control. The future is God's. The wise person isn't passive. He plants, he gives, and he works with humility, knowing the outcome belongs to God. The tone lightens up here. Light is sweet. Seeing the sun is a pleasant thing. If you live for many years, enjoy them all. But remember that darkness will come too. Everything is fleeting. This is the sober joy of the book. It never denies that life is sweet or forbids being glad. It just refuses to let joy become mindless. Rejoice, but remember. Enjoy the light, but don't ignore the dark. Receive the gift of life, but don't pretend it lasts forever. He speaks to the young. Rejoice in your youth, and let your heart be happy. Follow your passions and your vision. At first, this sounds like total freedom, but then the tone shifts. Know that for all these choices, God will bring you to judgment. Youth is not a sin. Joy is not bad. Energy and the beauty of life are not evil. They must be lived before God. Freedom is real, but it comes with accountability. He says to clear away frustration and pain, because youth and the dawn of life are like vapor. Youth is beautiful, but very brief. Strength feels like it will last forever, but it passes like a morning mist. The young think time is endless, but Ecclesiastes shows that even youth is a fleeting shadow. It is real, but you cannot hold it. Ecclesiastes chapter 12 opens with a vital command. Remember your Creator while you are still young. Do this before the hard days arrive. The preacher now describes aging with deep poetic seriousness. Sunlight and stars grow dim. Rain clouds never seem to leave. The body trembles and bends. Teeth are few, and vision fades. The imagery is delicate, yet it hits with powerful weight. Strength weakens. Daily rhythms slow down. Doors are shut, and the sounds of life fade away. Even a bird's song sounds loud. Fear grows, and the almond tree begins to blossom in white. Ambition fails. Man walks toward his eternal home as mourners fill the streets to say goodbye. This isn't a medical report. It's a poetic look at aging, the trembling, the fading, the quiet end. These symbols all point toward our mortality. But Ecclesiastes isn't mocking the elderly. It urges us to honor the Creator before our strength vanishes. Then comes the image of fragility. The silver cord snaps. The golden bowl shatters. These represent life's most precious, delicate things. Life is valuable, yet not indestructible. Dust returns to the earth, and the spirit returns to God. The preacher has let us hear from the start. We are dust, but we are so much more. Life is a gift from God. The opening words return one last time. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Now those words carry the weight of the whole journey. This is the conclusion after deep examination. Wealth, status, and strength are all vapor when treated as ultimate goals. Real, yet temporary. Enjoy them, but do not worship them. Do not build your life on shifting sand. The epilogue describes the preacher as wise. He arranged these proverbs with great painstaking care. His words are like sturdy nails, fixed firmly by the one true shepherd. Wisdom doesn't just offer comfort. It prods the heart, fastens truth into the soul, and guides us. Endless books and study can be exhausting. This isn't a rejection of learning. It is a warning. Endless information cannot replace simple obedience. You can study forever and still miss the point. You can collect countless ideas and still fail to stand right before God. Here is the conclusion. All has been heard. Fear God and keep His commandments. This is the whole duty of man. God will judge every deed, whether good or evil. The book starts with vanity and ends with accountability. A life that felt fragile and impossible to hold is not meaningless before God. Every deed matters. Every hidden secret is known. Every life stands before the Creator. This is the final purpose. It tears down false hopes to make room for true wisdom. It proves that pleasure cannot save. Wealth cannot satisfy. Wisdom cannot master the future. Power fades. Death cannot be ignored. Yet life is a gift. Work faithfully. Enjoy God's blessings and remember Him before the light fades. Under the sun, everything is vapor. Before God, everything matters. We have reached our journey's end. If you stayed until this moment, I want you to mark this lesson. Let your heart truly receive it. Write in the comments, I understood the message of Ecclesiastes. I will fear God and remember my Creator. This isn't just for engagement. It is a declaration. It acknowledges the heavy, beautiful weight of this book. Life is brief. Human glory fades. Pleasure cannot save. Every single soul must stand before God. Ecclesiastes answered the great questions. It exposed the emptiness of living only for things under the sun. It showed us that chasing what cannot last is futile. Success, knowledge, and achievement are temporary without the Creator. This isn't despair. It is an awakening. Stop worshiping what passes away. Receive life as a gift. Live wisely and walk in truth. Enjoy what He gives, but fear God. Every hidden thing will be brought to light. Every deed matters. Every choice is significant before the God who sees all. Tell me, what spoke to you most? Was it that pleasure fails to fill the soul? Or that there is a right time for everything? Was it the call to remember your Creator? Or the final, sober conclusion of the whole matter? Fear God, because we will all stand before Him. Share your thoughts. Your testimony can strengthen others. Your words may encourage someone searching for meaning. And now, before we close, let's speak personally. If you have spent your life chasing things that never truly satisfy, now is the time to look toward God. You were not made to live empty or distant from your Creator. Real peace is not in money or success. It is found in God alone. And He has shown that love through Jesus Christ. Jesus came to save the lost, forgive the guilty, and offer eternal life to all who believe. He died for our sins and rose again. He calls you to faith today. Do not wait for later. Listen to that voice in your heart. If you want to follow Jesus, pray this with me. Lord Jesus, I need you. I looked for meaning in things that failed me. I believe you died and rose for my sins. Forgive me and lead me now. I give you my heart. Teach me to walk in your truth and honor my Creator every single day. Amen. If you meant that, share it in the comments. Write, I surrender my life to Jesus as your own personal testimony. Life is too short to stay away from God. Eternity is too important to ignore His call. May the Lord bless and guide you. May He teach you to live in His fear. Until the next video, may the Lord keep you.